Thank you, Sandy, for your leadership. Thank you, Ambassador, for including me in this wonderful event. And thank you all for coming to Washington on a wonderful, wonderful day. As you heard from my introduction, I'm not a brain researcher or scientist, but more of an advocate. So I'm going to talk a lot about early childhood and some of the research there, but more importantly, how we're using that research to drive policy and how important that is. In 1921, Arthur Conan Doyle, in the voice of the legendary Sherlock Holmes, of whom I am a great fan, wrote, "I am brain, Watson. The rest of me is mere appendix." Some might wonder why Doyle chose those words. After all, we know that brains use only a fifth of the total blood and oxygen in our body. What makes the other 80%? Mere appendix. So maybe we can't take Doyle literally, but I think he might be onto something, especially when it comes to our youngest learners. We know that the brain begins building from the first moments of conception, and that 70% of the brain is developed by age 1 and 90% developed by age 3. It is during those early years that genes interact with experience, providing a foundation, weak or strong, for all future learning, behavior, and actually even health. Adults see little ones constantly on the go and wonder, where does all that boundless energy come from? Well, it's not just the kids' bodies that are active, it's actually their brains as well. The brain of a 3-year-old is 2.5 times more active than that of an adult. Science corroborates what we already know. The early years are critical if we want to help set our children on the right path in school and in life. I'm delighted that some of the best and brightest researchers from around our country have made understanding the minds of our youngest children a priority in their work. I'm here to thank you for what you've done and to celebrate your successes. Your brain research has helped to make the case for early learning. Yes, but it's done so much more, exploring how the brain interacts and reacts at all stages of life and development. But candidly, I'm here to ask for much more. We now know more about children's brains and learning capacity than ever before. In laboratories around the world, many of you work there, children's natural curiosity and drive is being studied. Over the past dozen years, scientists have made compelling discoveries about how babies and young children build the neurological connections they need to understand their world. You've taught us that experience gets into the brain as it's developing its basic architecture, and how that experience also gets into the cardiovascular system and the immune system. Researchers have taught us the importance of developing the most complex of human capacities, executive functioning, or as we call it in early childhood, our traffic control system. Essentially, children's capacity develops not through what they were just given, but through what they were given and that interaction with the world. At least every month, a new study comes out showing us how smart babies are and how much they're learning. For example, a recent study from iLabs found that while in the womb, babies already begin learning language from their mothers. In fact, at just hours old, they can differentiate between sounds from their native language and a foreign language. Unborn babies are actually listening to their mothers talk during the last 10 weeks of pregnancy, and at birth can demonstrate what they've heard. I've always been a proponent of high-quality early learning experiences, but now I have more research than ever to help make my case. It's really exciting that scientists are contributing to the cause, building strong bridges between research, policy, and practice. Long ago, I was a graduate student at the University of Texas. Back then, my way of thinking was fundamentally transformed by John Bowlby and others' work on mother-infant attachment and separation. This research represented for me the turning point in how I saw brain development. But for the general public, the turning point came a bit later, when we could clearly see pictures of the developing brain and know for a fact how it works. That made all the difference. iLab's investment in magnetoencephalography, or MEG, I prefer to use that, is a one-time machine that can safely peer inside the human brain to see how it works, is yielding important clues into how, where, and when human learning happens. The exquisitely sensitive MEG device can literally map the mental activity of an infant only a few days old and proves that newborn brains are anything but empty. Once word was out about early brain research, people and organizations across the country really wanted to help spread it. The United Way, about a decade ago, launched a major campaign to educate policy leaders and the general public about early brain development. Renowned scientists like Patricia Kuhl and others wrote The Scientist in the Crib, which made the complex and relatively new field of cognitive science accessible to parents. It taught us about how much babies actually know and how much parents naturally teach them. Over the last 20 years or so, we've worked hard to educate policymakers and the public about babies' amazing capabilities. And we owe our success to you, the brain researchers. You've helped us reach the public by making highly technical information discernible. Investing in the science is critical, but early childhood practice that is not driven by science is ineffective. Science without real-world application to practice is of little value. And policy developed without being informed by both practice and science is counterproductive. Unfortunately, brain research, which can reach parents through books and magazines, parenting classes, and now even the internet, sometimes doesn't get to those who need it the most, including those from low-income and immigrant families, and sometimes even our policymakers. The Developing Minds Project at iLabs is one initiative that's already begun the work to strengthen the ties between science and practice. iLabs is marrying new brain imaging technology with the vision and experience of a world-class research team. Scientists at iLabs continue to explore how young children learn, including windows of opportunity for social and cognitive development, optimal time trajectories for learning, and how and why the brain optimizes learning at different points in development. As they're completing this research, iLab scientists are expanding the reach to the policy world, disseminating their findings to policymakers, business leaders, educators, parents, and others who can benefit from it. They're developing actionable recommendations based on scientific findings, letting us in the policy world know what works and what doesn't. The Center on the Developing Child at Harvard is doing much the same thing, and I'm sure your labs are as well. That's so important to get that research into the hands of policymakers. Still, despite our efforts, we have a long way to go. Research indicates that children in lower income families hear 30 million fewer words than their higher income peers and acquire 100 fewer words by the age of 3. By the age of 3, 30 million words fewer. Children who have weak literacy skills in kindergarten, on average, are the same children who have weak literacy skills in 7th grade. And developmental trends suggest that a vocabulary gap at age 4 can influence that child's opportunity to succeed all the way through adulthood. All this to say is we need to make a change. In some homes and communities, it's an uphill battle. Parents don't have the right information, and without it can easily underestimate the powerful role they can play in the first months of their child's life to set him or her up for a life of success. But with the right information and resources, parents can make a big impact on their children's early years. In fact, an ambitious campaign and research study known as Providence Talks out of Providence, Rhode Island, is now working with the city's poorest residents to reduce that knowledge gap before the child begins school. Some of you may have read about Daisy Acuna Gonzalez, the 16-month-old daughter of Guatemalan immigrants. Daisy wears a tiny recorder that captures every word she hears and utters inside her family's cramped apartment 1 day a week. To help give parents feedback and provide data for researchers, a home visitor gives each family, all of whom who volunteer to participate, a tiny recording device known as Lena that is inserted into a vest worn by the child. The recorder distinguishes between words overheard from television and other electronics and live human conversations. Computer software then analyzes the number of words spoken, and then a trusted home visitor reviews the findings with the families each week. When Daisy's mother heard the results one week, she said, "Next week, I will do even better." Early results from this potential intervention are really encouraging. Philanthropic leaders are also stepping forward to try to build bridges between research and practice. This year, the Bezos Family Foundation launched a pilot project and put the findings of esteemed research institutes like iLabs into the hands of low-income parents in South King County, Washington. And as brain researchers have done and continue to do, the foundation makes the research accessible, providing toolboxes of practical tips of how parents can use them. Called Vroom, and I think that's going to be heard a lot more in the future, just like we didn't know what Amazon was, right? Well, now we don't know what Vroom is, but listen for it coming up. Called Vroom, these carefully crafted lessons aim to teach parents to talk to their babies, even before they can talk, to play simple games with them, and to make use of everyday moments like bath time, breakfast, and build those brain connections. These tips, and there are hundreds of them, are delivered on posters, cue cards, through a cell phone app, and on a website in different languages. They're even talking about putting them on cereal boxes and on children's diapers. If successful, and it's expected to be, the pilot could lead to a national campaign, including tips printed on popular consumer products. Vroom joins other philanthropic organizations like Too Small to Fail, a joint initiative of the Clinton Foundation and the Next Generation, to help parents and businessmen and women take meaningful action to improve the health and well-being of children ages 0 to 5. Ultimately, by securing commitments to action and using social media to inform and empower parents, Too Small to Fail works toward the same sort of outcomes that Vroom is looking for, to actually empower our parents to do a better job in raising their own kids. What's exciting is that we're now seeing research actually translated into policy over on Capitol Hill. In his 2013 State of the Union address, and again in 2014, President Obama set out a comprehensive early learning agenda very much based on all this research. This agenda invests in and strengthens early childhood education and care and development, beginning at birth and continuing to age 5. The President Obama understands that families play a most important role in promoting the healthy development of their children. Actually, Jack Shonkoff said it best. This is a quote, "To get breakthrough outcomes for kids, you must transform the lives of those who care for them." And yet too few families in our country have the information and support they need to create environments for their children to develop and learn. The Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program, created under the Affordable Care Act, provides $1.5 billion over 5 years to expand evidence-based home visiting programs in states to serve the most at-risk families. The program makes home visitors available to connect families to a range of services, including health care, early education, early intervention, and more, to better ensure that children are healthy and prepared for school and life. I start with home visiting here because it's a wonderful example of how policymakers have built on your research to help parents at risk do the best job they can in raising their children. Home visiting sets parents up to be lifelong partners with teachers and schools. It also is a particularly important way to fill learning gaps, especially in high needs areas where it can be difficult for parents to get their children to a program every day. One of the parents that benefited from home visiting is for Latia Loring, a mother of two. She learned about home visiting through Save the Children, a national advocacy organization, coincidentally from a promotional flyer. She's seen the difference in her children's preparedness for school. Her younger son, who's now 8 months old, has been exposed to books and reading at that early age. He's physically active, and her son is already holding books and showing interest in talking and words. Home visitors help Latia by giving her books, toys, resources, and most importantly, knowledge. Latia's story is just one of home visiting's many successes. Another major aspect of the President's proposal is a $1.4 billion investment in early Head Start and child care. Most of you may know that our child care system is pretty broken in this country. The quality of child care varies from very good when you have resources to buy it and from pretty poor when you don't. So this new proposal out of HHS marries early Head Start, which has high standards, with child care and provides child care the opportunity to really improve the services. And then, as you know all too well, expanding access to high-quality early education is one of the most smartest investments we can make. Participation in early learning programs like Head Start, public and private pre-K, and child care provides children from all backgrounds with a strong start and foundation for school success. So while brain researchers have been working on the physiological case for early learning, economists have been working on the financial one. Numerous studies have documented a rate of return of $4 to $7 or more on each dollar invested in early learning. And we get those savings through a reduced need for spending on other services such as remedial education, special education, grade repetition, as well as increased productivity and earnings by these children as adults. State policymakers have actually listened to all this research, and they acted last year. 30 governors, including 17 Republicans and 13 Democrats, proposed increases in funding for pre-K in their states. And I know that those of you who follow the news have seen the major debate in New York where Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo have been fighting over who can pay for pre-K in New York City. It really is a sea change. So another critical part of President Obama's early learning proposal is major expansion of preschool for all low and moderate income 4-year-olds through a voluntary state-federal partnership. This would build on what states have already put in place. This initiative would encourage states to serve additional 4-year-olds from middle-income families and promote access to full-day kindergarten and high-quality early education programs for children who are younger. The department plans to allocate funding to states based on their share of 4-year-olds from low and moderate income families. Funds would be distributed to local school districts who could then partner with child care centers and Head Start centers in their area. Well, this administration wants to improve the maternal and child health outcomes in the early years, enhance school readiness outcomes in the preschool years, and do much more. The President's proposed investments would leave a lifelong positive impacts on parenting skills, children's cognition, language, and social emotional development, and school readiness. When we as a early learning community succeed in expanding these efforts, we will ensure that our most vulnerable children are on track, starting at birth. In the last budget, we luckily got a down payment on some of these programs, so we've started building this system, but we need much more money in the future. I opened with a quote about the brain as a vital part, really the essential driver of human system. Let me close by taking that idea a little bit further. We could think of the public support as the brain of our proposal to fortify and expand high-quality early learning in this country. Building systems, funding home visiting programs, defining quality. All these make up the body of our early childhood agenda. But these parts can only work cohesively if the brain wills them to it. Change only comes if the public demands it. It's encouraging to see the growing numbers of business leaders, military leaders, law enforcement officials, and politicians from both sides of the aisle who are actively supporting the president's plan. Anyone and everyone who's concerned about giving America's next generation a strong start, a fair start, an equal start, can help educate others about how critical the early years are, both to the life of the child and the future of this nation. Without congressional support, though, and the public's collective voice, the president's proposal is mere appendix. Thank you.